Hello, folks. I'd like to welcome you to the Field Training Officer program. And we're going to get right into it and start talking about what to expect of you as a field training officer, about a little bit about the paperwork, and just some general guidance about how to train, how to be an instructor, how to be an educator, because really that's what the job is of the FTO. So let's get right into it, guys. So what is the job of the FTO? And everybody probably has some very different definitions of what the field training officer is, but this is kind of what we've sat down and talked about and what our expectations are for each field training officer. So the thing here, the first thing is we give instruction. That's our main job that we have, is that we give instruction. We're teaching the new employee the ropes of the company. Some folks are going to come in with varied training. Some of them may have experience from other ambulance services, fire department, rescue squads. Some folks are going to be coming right in with little to no prior experience. And so we're going to really have to take on that role as an instructor, as we're going to be teaching them quite a bit of things. We're going to be going over protocols, procedures, and rules. The things that are normal to us in everyday operations are going to be quite strange to the new employee. So we're going to make sure that we're answering questions. And we want to ask questions as well, making sure that we're reinforcing the things that we are teaching. We want to show how to perform job duties. Not just telling that new person how to do the job, but showing them, working together day in, day out. We give advice, we give feedback. And we document our instruction time. We make sure that we are giving not only that new employee feedback, but we want to get some feedback on our own performance as well. We want to make sure we're documenting that. So to be a mentor, you have to lead by example. And that's where everybody is going to get the most out of the FTO program, is that leadership, is you leading by example. You actually getting hands-on, getting in, reading those reports those employees are writing, giving good constructive feedback. You have to look the part, all right? If you're going to be an FTO, you are going to be a member of our leadership team here. Now, you may not be going to the big meetings or anything, but you are part of the leadership team. You are part of the education department. So you need to look the part, because that new employee is looking up to you by the example that you set. So make sure that you are following that grooming and that clothing standard exactly as it's prescribed. You need to make sure that your uniform looks good, your boots are polished, that you look the part of that EMS provider that you want taking care of your family. So make sure you're looking the part and look good when you're out there. And by all means, do the right thing, because they are watching and they are learning from every little thing that we do. So we have to follow the rules. And I know in EMS, man, we are rule breakers. We really are. I'm not so silly that I can't say that we don't do that. We do. And it's kind of part of what we do in EMS. But unfortunately, we have to be following the set standard and the set rules, because we want to set this employee up for success. So let's make sure that we follow those rules. Be the EMS provider that you want your student to be, because it all starts with you. Now, I can sit in a classroom on the first day and I can explain everything, but it's the folks, the FTOs, the actual boots on the ground, that are going to actually set these employees up for success. So it all starts with you guys. But one of the other things that doesn't get talked about very often is the fact that we have to be a friend. Is because I know how I felt when I first started here, and how many others have felt as well, as it's very awkward to start anything new. And believe it or not, we have a little family that's here. And we're also very picky as to who comes into our little family. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's good that we're selective in that way. But we don't want it to be where it's intimidating for this new employee. Is be a friend. The new employer or student may feel quite awkward around the new job or the new profession. This may be brand new to them. And so we want to set them up for success. We need to think back to our very first time at EMS. Number one, they are not in the know or in the loop of what we do. All right? As all of us have certain little quirks and different things that we do every day. For example, for me, if I'm working on the east side of town, if I get stuck on the east station, everybody who works with me knows that if Chris South is going to be working on the east side, we're going to go to Scotty's for lunch. That's my place. That's where I like to go. It's my little tradition. Me and Jaden started that, and we go to Scotty's when we work together, and I've been doing it ever since I've been here. Everybody has those little things and everything, and we all have our little traditions and things that we like and things that we do. Start inviting those new people into that. Start being friendly. If we're got all our work caught up and we're watching TV or Netflix or whatever, ask them what they would like to watch. You know, invite them into our little unit because they are going to become a little member of our family as well. We want them to feel welcome. So here are the things that we should be doing and the things we shouldn't be doing. All right, the first thing is you are not a disciplinarian unless you are in a leadership position with that responsibility. Because we do have captains and lieutenants who do have that responsibility of being a disciplinarian. But there's also FTOs who don't have that within their scope. But if you are working as the FTO that day, your main job is to train and educate, all right? We don't want to be a check-in-the-box FTO. There's nothing that I can't stand is somebody who just goes through the checklist and marks it off without ever actually showing the new person the thing that they needed to get checked off of. If you didn't do it, don't check it. If you did do it, check it. Because this documents that we have is going to be very, very important because if this employee messes up and says, hey, I was never shown this, we have that documentation to go, yes, you were shown this. You signed that you received this information and understood how to do it. So we want to set that employee up for success as well. Don't be a jerk, even if it's in your nature. We have to be very friendly. We have to be open. We have to be able to make sure that we are training. But that also doesn't mean that we just cut everybody slack all the time, because we do have a very serious job. And we want to make sure that sometimes we do have to provide constructive criticism. We have to have those hard conversations. But our hard conversations are always done in a spirit of educating and lifting up that employee and empowering that employee to become the very best EMS provider that they can be. The next thing is don't be a bad example. Certainly don't be a bad example. We all have bad things that we do. We all make some less than stellar choices sometimes. But we got to be a good example for this employee. And one of the things is that I will absolutely not put up with, and I've been assured by upper management as well, is that we're not going to have FTOs that are going to badmouth the company. All right? If you are going to be badmouthing the company, and Lord knows everybody has complaints and things, and I totally get that. I have them. Everybody does. Is we need to do those away from that person that we are trying to train up. They're going to hear all this stuff on their own, and they need to hear it not from the mouth of an FTO. Is the FTO needs to, if you're working as an FTO that day, you have to be basically, man, just singing the praises of the company. It's talking about the good things. That's what we're trying to bring to light, or the good things of the company, and why this new employee is, we want to bring them up to become a stellar and a good employee. So let's keep those complaints to a minimum. So the FTO process has changed from what it used to be. We spent a lot of time and a lot of hard work and effort in coming up with a good FTO process. And guys, this FTO process is going to be followed per the letter as found within this PowerPoint presentation. The reason is we have to have consistency with this program. And that's one of the things when we were developing the program and getting some feedback from other employees. And the main thing that we would hear over and over and over again was there's no consistency in the program. Well, we've changed that. There is going to be consistency. The way that we do the FTO program from now on is going to be the same for every employee, because we want to have consistency within this process. And we can do it. And a lot of the things that we have learned within the three-phase process that we're bringing in are lessons learned from other areas, different companies. A lot of the stuff that I brought in from regional paramedic services, which was where I spent nearly 18 years of my career, is bringing in some of the things. We were a large company. We had over 1,000 employees. And so we had a big training department, so we learned some of that. But you're going, well, we're a small company. That doesn't matter. We can still have consistency. Think about the fire departments and stuff. They have consistency in their training, even though they're small. And we can do the same thing. It's because we want to generate the very best EMS professionals possible. And we can do that by having an excellent education program. And you guys are part of that. So this is a three-phase process. So this is what no longer applies. And I know this is going to take a while to kind of get out of our vocabulary a little bit. So the term EMT orientation and medic orientation no longer applies. I know in the past they did like this EMT orientation, and then if they were a paramedic, they had to go to the paramedic side of it. And one of the things is two things. Number one, we don't want the paramedic who's coming in to think that they can't do their paramedic stuff yet. And we don't want the EMT to think that their orientation is any less than the paramedic orientation. It's not. One of the things that I hear from some folks is that the EMT is nothing more than the paramedic's helper. Not true at all. The paramedic has a specific job function that they do. The EMT has the same thing. They have a very specific job function that they do. And so it doesn't make one better or greater than the other one. They just have a different function. However, the paramedic is responsible for overseeing the operation on a truck, which does have a supervisory component of the EMT. And we want to talk about that, but they have to learn to work as a team together. And so we certainly don't want to send off a precedent that one is greater than the other, because it certainly isn't. Man, I would not be able to do my job without the fantastic EMTs that I have working with me every day. Those EMTs help me to be successful. And I look at them as just as important as I am with that patient care. So what we've switched to is a three-phase orientation process with the focus at the beginning, which is phase one, on operational skills. And what operational skills is the day-to-day things that are very specific to metro area ambulance, such as driving, mapping, learning how to use our documentation systems, learning how to get in and to figure out how to use the daily transfer sheet, all of the daily things that every employee should know how to do. That's what's found within that phase one component here, is that those employees are having to learn the basic things that make Metro great, our own little Metro stuff. And that's what we're getting into at the beginning of that. And once I get good at that, then we can start focusing and broadening and kind of focusing more on those clinical skills, because there's clinical skills for the EMT and clinical skills for the paramedic. And we're going to make sure that they should be pretty well versed in their clinical skills when they come out of school. We just want to fine-tune them, refine them, making sure they're following our specific protocols and things, and to help them. Because believe it or not, the thing it's the hardest to instruct, the hardest thing that the new employee is going to have the most difficulty with is not the patient care side, it's actually the operation side. It's learning the very metro specific way that we do things. It all starts on day one. So once we've hired an employee, all right, Dan and the guys in the office, they have decided that this person is going to be a good fit for us, so we're going to give them a try. All right, they've gone through the vetting process. They've had their background check. They made sure that they have a license. All right, they are going to get assigned to day one. The day one orientation happens at the South Station. This is where the employee fills out all of their day one paperwork. We make sure that all their license information is taken care of. We start the badge process and everything. We get everything that they need. We make sure that they're in our payroll system. Everything that they're going to need to be an employee, we start taking care of on day one. We do a skills evaluation to make sure that they can do some of the basic skills that they're going to need during phase one. We're going to teach them and make sure they understand how to place basic airway adjuncts in for the basic side. We're going to make sure and practice some intubation and different things on the paramedic side, and just make sure that they are comfortable with those skills that they learned in school. We're going to do a tour of the ambulance. This tour is just a general overview of where some of the stuff is, because you guys as FTOs, you're going to be teaching them how to do those daily checkoffs and where all the equipment is and all the differences between the different trucks. You guys are going to be handling that. We're just going to kind of give them a little tour. We're going to take them on a drive of Bismarck and Mandan and kind of show them around some of the major places that we go to, a lot of the nursing homes that we go to, some of the major intersections and how to get on the interstate and the highways and things. We're going to show them that on that day one. One of the things that I always do is I try to take the employee out to eat somewhere, just to kind of get to know them a little better. We're also going to try to do our badge access that day. We're going to take them over to Sanford, also over to St. Alexis, and we're going to make sure that the employee gets badged in so we can get them badge access. We're going to go over stretcher operations. We're going to teach them how to properly load and unload with not only the striker, but also with the furnos, which are found on the transfer trucks. We're going to show them how to use a stair chair, all of our lifting and loading equipment. We're going to teach them how to do that. And this is the very beginning of phase one, and this will be the first day that they get to ride with anybody. They are given a copy of the orientation book. And we're going to get into that in just a second. The orientation book is going to be very, very important. So the orientation book, the new employee is required to have this with them throughout the entire orientation process. Everywhere they go, they have to have this book. If they leave the book behind somewhere and I find out about it, I'm going to that employee going, how are you going to learn if I've got your book? And then we're going to have a conversation about why they need that. The employee receives the orientation book on day one. If you guys have been in the Army, you probably remember the smart books back in the day that you had to carry around with you. It's the same thing. It is the book that I need them to be in, learning our protocols, learning our standard operating procedures, learning the things that we do. It is part of their employment process. It has their FTO checkoff sheets, which we're going to look at. Has a copy of the protocols, the employee handbook, and the operations handbook. The employee gets this on day one. So during phase one, this is an introduction to operations. This is where they are learning the basics of what we do at Metro. And there's a lot of things we do at Metro, and it takes a lot of studying and just hands-on stuff to learn how we do things. The very first day should be kind of observational and hands-on education. As the first day or two, as they are just kind of getting their feet wet. They should be able to complete basic skills learned in EMS school and should be able to be competent in all those skills of phase one by a maximum of 6 shifts. They should be able to get the basics of what we do in 6 shifts. Each shift must be documented on SharePoint and skills completed in the orientation book. So as an FTO, on SharePoint, each employee will have what's known as a daily, it's just a little daily log, and you're going to go in there and basically just write a small narrative about how your day went, what the employee is learning, what they are really good at, and the things that they need to work on. And the reason for this is so as the next FTO who has that employee, they can see what you've gone over, and they can see if that employee is either progressing or regressing. Inside the FTO book are checkoff sheets. be right there at the beginning. And you are going to mark off, either pass or fail, the skill station that that employee has completed. All right, this is very important. This stays in the book and everything because that is going to be used. It's going to be used as documentation that the employee has completed those certain skills, and that documentation is going to follow that employee as part of their training record. So there are very specific skills for each employee depending on the level that they are at. So let's take a look at the basic skills used by the EMT. Length of time is 3 to 6 shifts, and as you can see there, that is all of the very specific skills they need to be able to complete within 6 shifts. Is knowing how to operate the LifePak 15, how to do transmissions, how to mark events, all of these different things that are on there. We're going to get more specific into them. And you can see that there's a few extra things that are added on the medic side, on the medic skills. If you can look, you can see that there are different skills that are in there, and all this stuff is found inside the book. So one of the first things that we need to do, and it does take a little bit of reinforcement, is being able to properly operate the LifePak 15, right? The LifePak 12s are still found on the transfer trucks. Hopefully that's going to be changing pretty soon. But until that, we need to also talk about the difference between the LifePak 12 and 15. But for the most part, the 15 and the 12, there's not very many differences because the buttons are essentially the same. We want to make sure that every employee is well versed in the LifePak 15. So here we go. I'm going to teach them the basic operation, which is powering the LifePak on, making sure that it's plugged in, how to properly unplug it, and ensuring the inverter is on. We should show every employee what to do if the inverter trips off, how to trip it back on, and things to do as far as basic troubleshooting. We should show them all the equipment in the pockets, such as where the 4-lead and 12-lead cables are, the BP cuff. We need to show them where the ETCO2 plugs in, the SBO2, and making sure that how to plug in the defibrillator and pacing pads as well. The daily checkup. This is very important, and every employee should know how to do the basic checkoff when it comes down to doing operating the LifePak 15. Is every employee needs to know how to do the basic checkups. Let's go through it. The first thing is how to perform a user test. So show them how to go into the options, select a user test. I know some people go, well, it does it automatically at 2 a.m. Doesn't matter. This has to be performed at the beginning of every shift. Show them how to adjust the date and time within the options. Show them how to check the printer, how to change the paper out. Show them how to do a test transmission, and also teach them how to transmit to the hospital. Teach them how to transmit to St. A's or over to Sanford. But also teach them how to transmit over to HIMSS, because it's going to be very important in our documentation. The daily checkoff must be documented on the daily truck checkoff sheet. All right? This is part of what we do. Show them where to find what the name of that monitor is, if it's 15-2 or 15-4 or whatever. Show them where all that information is found at. Then we need to show them the basics of the home screen. The home screen is that screen that first pops up when we turn on the monitor. All right? We want to show them how to select the home screen, how to use the knob and the selector switch to scroll between the different options. Teach them how to change the leads and how to adjust the lead size. Adjusting the lead size is very important. It's because if the lead size is too small, you may not be able to properly interpret what the patient's rhythm is. So teach them how to turn a lead up. Show them how to add different waveforms on the home screen, such as being able to add SPO2 waveform and ETCO2 as well. But also teach them how to select the blood pressure and how to set it for automatic NIBP measurement, which is fantastic, is being able to select that, and so it automatically starts checking those blood pressures. Every employee needs to know how to place the monitor in the AED mode, and even more important, how to get it out of the AED mode. So show them how to turn on the AED mode by selecting Analyze. Show them the CPR button with the metronome as well. And show them that they may have to turn the monitor on and off to get it out of the AED mode or go to the home screen. So with the alarms, go into the alarm button. Show them how to set alarms. Also show them how to set different limits for alarms. Show them how to turn on the VFib VTAC button. The VFib VTAC button may alarm if the patient isn't in VFib or VTAC. And you can also show them how to silence certain alarms and that there are limits on how long that button will be silenced for. So show them some of those extra little bells and whistles there. We need to show every employee how to properly defibrillate and cardiovert, even though that the EMT may not have the skill set necessary to do this as far as giving the treatment to the patient. They can still be very valuable in hitting some buttons because they may be up closer on the monitor side than the paramedic and may be able to hit buttons. So show them how to find the energy select, how to charge it, how to initiate a shot. Show them how to hit the sync button for synchronized cardioversion as well. So the pacer, for pacing, we want to go over, number one, when do we pace? When do we have to call medical control for pacing? When can we just pace per protocol? We want to show how to get electrical capture and also how to get mechanical capture. Show them how to increase the rate using the buttons on the monitor, how to increase the milliamps, and the pause button. All of those are basic functions of the pacer that especially the paramedic needs to be very familiar with. The event button. And I had to admit that when I was writing this, I was going, man, I am really, really terrible about using the event button. But I am getting better with it. The event button that's on there adds accurate time to the event. And I got to thank Paul for this when he was really talking to me about why it was so important to have good, accurate times on our reports. And he was going, hey, man, use that event button. It's really going to help you out. And you can hit buttons, and you can have accurate times for medication administration, the insertion of IV lines, different procedures, and there is a generic button if there's a procedure or a medication that's not necessarily found in that. Just hit generic and it'll pop up within there, and you can add later on in your report what that generic time was. Very, very awesome be able to use that event button. And so let's start teaching our employees how to use this button. All right, the Lucas 2 orientation. This is done on day one. It's one of the little things that new employees get on the first day with me. They are going to watch a couple little videos about the Lucas 2, read up some information on it, and they will take an exam online and print out a certificate. Every employee from now on has to have the Lucas 2 certification done. This has to be done within phase one. It's typically done on the first day that the employee is here. And we also get one of our Lucas devices out, and we do a hands-on training and show them the proper way to use that Lucas device. During phase one, all employees have to be fully badged in by being released to phase two. This does include an airport badge. We want to get the metro door access with our little fobs that we get. We also want to make sure that they know how to gain access via the key boxes and make sure they know the code for that. We want to make sure that they get with Jeff and do the Metro Supply login. I'll tell you, man, Jeff does an amazing job with a little orientation and going through and showing the guys and gals how to get supplies, how to do the numbers, what to do when things don't go wrong. That is the best person, honestly, as far as supplies. I just turn them right over to Jeff because Jeff knows all the ins and outs and he does a great job for that. So please, during phase one, make sure that a new employee gets some time with Jeff to go over supplies. Let's get them a St. A's and a Sanford badge. Day one, we should be filling out the Bismarck Airport badge and helping and assisting that employee with getting over there, getting that badge over to administration, and then after that, actually going over to the airport fire department and making sure that they get their airport badge. The next thing is narcotics access. This is for all the paramedics have to have access to the narcotics, and this is done by seeing the deputy chiefs that get that handled. The quicker we handle that, the better. So at the end of phase one, right, this is the very beginning of their FTO process. They should graduate from third-party ride-along at the end of this process. They should be ready to be able to go out with an FTO partner after that. They're going to be placed with an FTO, all right? They will remain with an FTO until the end of phase two. We want to put them with a good FTO partner because they're going to be able to continue to teach. All right. So now we're going on to phase two. So in this phase, it includes a little more testing and more competencies and advanced skills, as we're making sure that they can do all of the functions they need to do. Now, some of those checkoffs are going to be required by the education director. That means there are certain skill sets that they're going to have to come down here into the lab, and I'm going to have to go through some different things with them and make sure that they can do things like needle decompression, that kind of stuff. We want to make sure that they are driving, mapping, and getting comfortable with daily operations at this point. Now, we're talking about driving. We're talking about code 3 driving during this section, because they should be able to drive code 1 at the end of phase 1. Phase 1, code 1. It's going to go later with that. They should be doing daily tasks as other employees are performing. So when they come in the morning, they should be going right out to the truck, doing the truck checkoff, doing the daily things, just making sure that our truck looks good, that it's ready to go, that it's logged in. Everything needs to be taken care of, and then they're getting in that habit of going ahead and doing station duties and all the things that can do it. They should be getting comfortable with doing their own paperwork. Now, we may have to assist them quite a bit during phase 2, but during this is we should be kind of monitoring their paperwork, looking at it, making sure their documentation is up to par, that they know how to do all of our different types of documentation, whether it's like 103 paperwork, whether we're doing cancer cares, all that kind of stuff. They are comfortable and competent in doing that. By the end of phase 2, they should be, man, just barreling this stuff out with no problem. So our EMT skills during, because this phase lasts roughly about 6 weeks, about a month and a half, is they should be able to really, man, function pretty well on their own. They should be able to know how to use our CAD. They should be well versed in SharePoint. Mapping should be quite easy for them. Not only should they be able to use basic like GPS, different functions and stuff, but they should start knowing where a lot of the major stuff is at this point and be able to find their way pretty easy. During this phase, we should be learning and be competent in driving code 3. They should take their protocol test, their policy test. They should complete the scavenger hunt, which is found in the book. They should be very competent in being able to place an iGel. They should know how to place the CPAP, and they should be familiar with our rotation protocol with the hospitals. As you can see, most of the skills are also going to be found with the medics, but there are some additional things they need to be able to learn, such as how to pace, cardiovert, using the IVAC. We want to have their second drug test, which is an open book, is learning our drugs. They should be able to set up blood tubing, be able to perform deep suctioning. They're going to need to learn how to be able to perform needle decompression, and that's also a checkoff that happens here with me. They need to be able to do cricothoracotomy and learning how to place an IO. And we're going to be able to test them and be able to figure out how they would be able to perform a fast ED assessment. One of the things that I do is I make sure they put that fast ED app on their phone. And once again, we'll go to the rotation protocol. All right, so one of your jobs as an FTO is, believe it or not, is actually teaching our new employees how to drive. And so most people do know how to drive non-emergency pretty quick because it's basically just like you drive your car for the most part. But now we're going to take it up a notch and we're going to be driving in the emergency mode. And we want to make sure that we are setting them up for success. As we want to make sure that they are driving safely, and we want to make sure that they are driving comfortably as well. As we want to make sure, number one, that they are pretty okay with driving in the non-emergency mode. Then we're going to teach them how to drive in the emergency driving mode. And there are a couple of classes that the employees should be taking during this time, or at least sometime during. During the this process is at the very minimum, they're going to need to take some kind of driver education. So this is required versus suggested driver education. The first one is defensive driving is required by all employees. It's mandatory for all field employees. It is an in-house course. It is instructed by Roy. Roy does an excellent job. And what's cool about the defensive driving course is it can be used as a discount on your insurance. Now, I teach EVOC and EVOS, and it's suggested for all employees, but highly recommended for the first-time drivers of an emergency vehicle. It is a state and federal DOT course, and I'm the instructor on that one. All right, guys, so that's a little bit about the driver education. So winter driving, we do work in North Dakota, and we are going to get folks who are not from North Dakota, including this guy. One of the things that I was absolutely terrified of when I first moved up here was winter driving. We don't get any much winter weather down south, and I was absolutely horrified when I moved here. But thank God somebody actually took me out to an empty parking lot and began to teach me a little bit about winter driving. So we want to make sure that we're teaching about skid avoidance, safe braking, safe stopping distance, driving slower, winter parking, so where to park at, and let's talk about weird things that I never even knew about, things like pillow drifts, snow drifts, even if things look solid that they're not, all of these different things. Let's talk about winter maintenance, because we do have to do some additional things on our ambulances when it's winter time. Even if it's in the summertime when an employee comes in, let's go ahead and start beginning to teach about winter operations because it's a good part of our year. There is some patience that's going to be required when we are teaching new employees how to drive, and it takes a lot of patience and it's going to take a lot of practice on there because driving an ambulance is not a skill that's learned overnight. It's natural to us because we do it every day. But think about the first time you drove an ambulance. You were like, oh my goodness, this is so weird. It takes a lot of patience to teach someone to operate an emergency vehicle because a lot of things can go wrong when we're driving an emergency vehicle. So we want to make sure that we're teaching and having some patience. And one of the things is, if they're brand new to driving in emergency mode, take them somewhere where it's a little more forgiving to practice. One of the things that I do is I kind of take them out on the outside of town and we drive around the emergency mode, we get them comfortable, and then I just spend a lot of time allowing that employee to just drive emergency. We have to teach them to find their way, is because we have to be able to get to where the emergency is. We have to be able to get there, and we have to be able to get there safely and be able to operate over to that emergency call and be able to find our way. So we want to teach navigation skills by knowing territory. And that simply is driving around in your territory. Let's say you're at the North Station with a new employee. Drive around, get them to drive around and start getting familiar with those nursing homes are, where those major intersections are. Start showing them which streets run north and south and which ones run east and west. Talk about streets to divide different sections of the city. So if you're in Mandan, you need to explain that Collins is the dividing line from east to west, and that Main Street is the dividing line of north and south, and it's going to help them to know which part of the city to go to. Show them those frequent locations and learning areas using Google and other GPS services as a backup and not a primary means of navigation. The best way to primary navigate is to know territory, is to know your operations, where you're at. So for testing navigation, if you will look in the FTO book, in the FTO sheets, there is a mapping and navigation practice sheet. And the employee should be able to navigate to all of those addresses by the end of phase 2 without any problems. At the end of phase 2, this is what we're looking for right here. At the end of phase 2, if everything has gone well, man, they are just learning, and learning. We want to graduate them to full partner status. Now, just because an employee has been graduated to full partner status doesn't mean that the evaluation is over with. Oh, by no means. But this is going to allow them to start becoming their own person, becoming their own EMS professional. They're going to be out and about on their own now. Phase 3, which is the last part of it, represents the final assessment portion of that FTO process. At this stage, the employee should be confident enough to be working partner status and functioning well with limited oversight. The FTO should be following up that the employee is functioning well. We want to make sure that this employee is functioning very well on their own, that they're not having any issues, they don't have any problems with their skills, that they are, have really learned what it takes to be a Metro Ambulance EMS professional. This is what we're looking for. And during phase 3, as we are just confirming that we have done a good job teaching and they have done a good job learning. At the end, the EMT should be able to, they should pass their drug test, know all the drugs that they can give. They should be able to by the end of that 6 months, they have had to go ahead and taken the state-approved enhanced skills program. They should do their final scavenger hunt, their final protocol test, their policy test. We should run a mock code, which happens with me, and I'll bring a few extra folks in to help out. And they should be able to run a code. They should be able to assist with rapid sequence intubation. All of our videos are complete. They should know how to do a medical examiner's admit. They should be familiar with blood tubing. And they should be able to explain omission criteria. Is when we admit the omission criteria for placing people on backboards, also for trauma alerts, those kind of things. They should be very familiar with all of that. The paramedic, at this stage, they should have taken their final drug test and be very familiar with all the drugs that we have. They should have been educated on the ventilator. During this time, hopefully they will be able to get into an advanced stroke life support class. They should do their final scavenger hunt, their protocol and policy test. And again, they should be able to do all the mock code skills with their problem. They complete their videos. They know how to do the ME admit. They should be very familiar with orotracheal intubation. All right, they're going to take their 12-lead final, and they should have taken a 12-lead class during this time. They should be very familiar with ARCAD and mapping. They should be taking their defensive driving. They should do their trauma criteria test, and again, the omission criteria. They should be able to explain every single little bit of our operations with no problem. This is the final evaluation where we put a stamp on that employee and go, hey, we've shown them everything that they need to know, as a new hire employee, and they are good to go. This is the final evaluation. At the end of 6 months, the employee should have completed the entire process. They should be very, very familiar with their operations, and honestly, they should be like everybody else. The FTO paperwork is placed into the employee training record and kept on file. This is kept here with us, and we want to make sure that that documentation is done and it's done correctly. So all those tests that you're seeing on there, you're going, what is this protocol test and policy test? These are found, all right, online, and it's going to be able to be found under the FTO stuff on the P drive. You can go in and you can find all of the documentation, all of the paperwork, but this can also be found on SharePoint as well. If you're unsure of testing, ask for help from me. Just come up and be like, hey, do you mind doing the test? That's not a problem at all. I don't mind administering tests. So sometimes things doesn't always go well, all right? I wish I could tell you that every time that you get a new employee, that things are just going to go perfect. They're going to learn everything. Everything's just going to go just swimmingly. Unfortunately, that's not true at all. Before placing blame on the new employee, which is easy to do. It's so easy to go, man, this guy sucks, and just to blow him off. But if we are good at our job, if we are good as an educator, as an instructor, as an FTO, we need to look at our process first. And the first thing we should ask is, am I teaching effectively? Not everybody's a good educator. It's one of the skills that I have. I'm very blessed with. The good Lord blessed me to be an educator. But not everybody can do that, and that's okay. And the next thing we ask, am I using different teaching methods? Everyone learns differently. Some people like to read, others are visual, some books are hands-on. We need to be using a variety of different techniques to be able to help instruct that employee. So we need to also ask, is this a pattern of poor performance or is it just an isolated incident? And so everybody's entitled to have a bad day. Everybody screws up. And believe it or not, I expect failure. It's one of the things that I expect as an educator. I expect every person who works at Metro to mess something up. And I like that. You're going, what are you talking about? The reason is failing is how we learn. If we fail at something, it gives us an opportunity to learn the right ways, because when we make a mistake, we can see the unfortunate outcome of that mistake, and we can learn not to do that again. It's part of the learning process. It's natural because nobody is perfect. Is the new employee having similar issues with other FTOs? If that is the case, then it's going to kind of go back on that employee. However, a lot of times things can just be personal issues. Not everybody gets along. Not everybody has the same different personalities. There are some people, man, I work with, great. And there are other people where it's just a struggle, is we just have different personalities, and there's nothing wrong with that. If a lot of times we can move that employee from one FTO to the next, and they may just do well. Let's try that. If not, it may be a problem with performance that we need to take care of. All right. Issues directly related to patient care and operations such as driving. This is clinical and operational stuff. If the employee is having training issues or not understanding or not doing things correctly, that comes to me. That falls under the education department. I am the lead FTO. You need to bring that before me, and we can come up with a plan to hopefully be able to right the problem. All right? A lot of times, most of these things have to do with an employee needing to be re-educated. And we can come up with a plan to help them be successful. This needs to come to me, all right? Because I can offer some different options and different things that we can get that employee right. If an employee continues to struggle after training, the issue will probably need to be progressed up the chain of command for evaluation. But we're a team. Each FTO that has a hand in this employee, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to call you up and we're going to talk about different things, and all of us are going to come up with a plan that's going to work well for this employee. We're going to try to write them by working together. But sometimes we may have to go, hey, this employee may not be the best fit for our company or our organization, and then that's when we progress that up to the chain of command. However, disciplinary issues, we can't have disciplinary stuff going on. Any issue related, and this is the term I want to use, willful violation of company policy. If they made a mistake and violated company policy and it wasn't willful, it was just a mistake, we can talk to that employee and hopefully write that. But if they're just not following and not doing things, it needs to be addressed. And it's not addressed by me. It does not come to the education department. It's not part of training. Willful violation of company policy goes to the chain of command, including the lieutenants, captains, and deputy chiefs. They follow their own procedures. That doesn't have anything to do with FTO or training. They have their own way of dealing with that. But if you're having disciplinary stuff, turn that over to them. Walk completely away from that and let those guys handle it. You are going to have to do some documentation. Every shift as an FTO must be documented in SharePoint on the daily field log. Every employee is going to have a daily field log. It's going to be found on the Mass FTO site. You're going to go in and you're going to document every day that you're with that employee on how they are progressing. If you checked off a skill, it must be logged in the orientation book. All right? In order for me to be able to pay you guys FTO pay, you have to show me that you're actually doing FTO stuff. And the only way that I'm going to see that, and then Dan's going to see that, and he's asked me to make sure that you are documenting that you're performing the work in the FTO log, and also documenting on your timesheet that you were the FTO that day. Make sure you're documenting, man, showing us that you're doing that good job, because I know you're going to be doing a good job for us, but I'd like to have something written that shows it as well. So guys and gals, thank you so much for taking the time to learn about our FTO process. If you have any questions, by all means, give me a shout. My telephone number is 701-340-4925. I'm usually available 24 hours a day. Just give me a shout. I'll be able to help you out and to walk you through this process and everything. Okay, guys, you have now completed the FTO video. There is a short exam that's going to be emailed to you. Please take that exam. Once you take that exam, please give it to me. You can either email it to me, or you can just see me out and about. Hand me that sheet, and if you've answered all the questions and everything and got a passing grade on it, you will be given a certificate that says that you are an authorized field training officer for the company. So again, guys and gals, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, by all means, let me know. I'll be able to help you out. So thanks so much, guys, for watching our little presentation here. Thank you so much. Any questions, give me a shout. Thank you.